East Linton at War, a story still to be told. Part 1. 25 years ago, I asked an East Linton resident for his thoughts when he returned home at the end of World War II. I was writing an article about East Linton and the parish of Prestonkirk between 1945 and the year 2000. His name was Ian Craig, and he was involved in the family joinery business called MacArthur's. His reply was that many of the residents were tired after years of war, but then he added, while chronic shortages of basic materials and general rationing held back rejuvenation and development of essential services, there emerged a general satisfaction of a job well done and a quiet optimism for the future. Wartime organisations such as the Home Guard and the Air Raid Wardens were closed down, and halls requisitioned by the Army were returned to their former use. There was no special event to mark the 80th anniversary at the end of World War II in East Linton this year, but on the Monday, the 23rd of June, I visited an event at St Cuthbert's Church in Norham on the south bank of the River Tweed. The local residents had organised a flower festival to commemorate the end of the war in Europe and in Japan, which ended on the 15th of August 1945. Men from the area had fought in the East, and after the Japanese surrender, many were so affected by the conditions that they had endured as prisoners of war in Japan, their return home was delayed for months. This presentation, with the title East Linton at War, is based on the events recorded in the archives of East Linton Burgh Council. The 33 Norham flower arrangements on the theme, A Moment in Time, used floral displays to tell the story of individuals and their families. It was a local family history study. That would have been my preference, but the events affecting the East Linton community are still of interest and deserve to be told in this anniversary year. The names and details of those who died in action in World War II are available on the East Linton Heritage webpage site. Part 2. The early months. The minutes of the East Linton Burgh Council show that they had considered circulars with advice on coping with air raids in September 1937. After the declaration of war on the 3rd of September, they arranged an urgent meeting on the 6th of September 1939. Their first task was to appoint Mr. Aim, the former primary school head teacher, as fuel control officer. Future meetings were to be held on Sundays to conserve light. There were other urgent problems revealed in the council minutes. On the 28th of June 1939, they had purchased a trailer for the fire service and had ordered equipment and a hose on the 19th of July. They now required John Kerr and Company Limited to supply the hydrant and hose without further delay. The borough boundary on the north was Langside at the end of the High Street. That meant they had to share the new trailer they had bought with the county fire service. The official test of the air raid siren was described as disappointing and could not be heard in various parts of the town. A new siren was bought for £8. It had a range of half a mile. The question of a public shelter to hold 50 people was discussed on the 10th of July 1940. 70% of the costs would be paid for by the borough if they cooperated with the county authorities. Laying the builder got the contract on the 10th of September 1940. The committee also agreed to buy 10 additional stirrup pumps at £1 each with 25 feet of hose. Meantime, the skies above East Lothian had seen some of the first shots in the air battle taking place. On the 16th of October 1939, the Forth Bridge was bombed at 2:30 in the afternoon. On the 24th of October 1940, an unexploded bomb went through the concrete pavement of the bridge over the River Tyne and fell 40 feet to the river. Bullets damaged the roofs of houses in the main street. Fortunately, no one was injured. There were other incidents. On the 26th of November, Presconkirk poorhouse was damaged when 3 bombs fell nearby. By 1941, there were at least 8 incidents involving bomber and fighter attack. Bombs were dropped at Haddington and East Linton in March 1941, and on the 17th of August 1941, Innerwick Station was attacked with 2 250-kilogram bombs which failed to explode. 1 man was killed and 3 people were injured from machine gun fire. Most of the adjacent towns were experiencing similar incidents. Part 3. Preparation for invasion. On the 12th of February 1942, a separate committee was set up to prepare for a possible invasion, with Provost McCall in the chair. Membership included Captain Patterson of the Home Guard, F.W. Avery, Firemaster, J. Story, the local vet, and he was responsible also for food supplies. Police Constable Watt was also on this committee. Its original name was the East Linton Local Defence Committee. Later to be called the Invasion Committee, it was one of many set up across the county. Their minute book is now held at the John Gray Centre Archives in Haddington, and reveals the first task was to agree that the area they would be responsible for would be the borough of East Linton, and that the military organisation would be the Home Guard. There was also a separate organisation of trained saboteurs operating in the area and sworn to secrecy. Tom Middlemas's father was part of that group. He was not allowed to tell his wife where he was going when they left the house in the evening. They had their headquarters at Drylaw Hill House, as well as hideouts at Smeaton, Janefield and Gilmerton. One man had a special hideout at Pencraig, where he could see the East Fortune aerodrome. The minute for the second meeting on the 26th of February 1942 has a record of phone numbers from which we learn Miss Aitchison was in charge of the rest centre and Miss Patterson in charge of the first aid post. Dr. Badenoch was co-opted and W.H. Lang was asked to join the committee. There was national guidance the committee had to consider, such as the use of ambulances, immobilisation of tractors, food for combatants, organisation of fire parties and evacuation arrangements. Specific rules related to parachutists. Church bells will not be rung unless more than 6 parachutists are seen. Anyone seeing more than 6 had to report this to the police, wardens, home guard or military. The key to the church was to be hung in the ARP control. The committee were now getting into the detail of their responsibilities and listed the following local issues needing attention. It was considered the enemy might attempt to capture the aerodrome at East Fortune and interrupt communications by blowing up road and railway bridges. The population would be encouraged to stand firm by police and wardens in keeping with the national order to stay put. Fire services would assist the military. Cadets would be trained as messengers and runners, and 50 layers of ground would be set aside for burials in the cemetery. There would be supplementary fire parties consisting of 16 teams of 3 men, approximately 50 men, of whom 14 were elderly. The following areas were to be evacuated in the event of an invasion: Scotscraig, Lauder Place, St Andrews Manse, Linton Lodge, Station Houses, Bridge Street including the Railway Hotel, Bridge End and Mill Wynd. Evacuees were to make their own arrangements for accommodation. An invasion pamphlet was compiled on the 24th of March 1942. Wardens were to go round the district and use the pamphlet to explain to the public what they must do. This was the content. 1. Do not gossip or listen to rumour. Police wardens and the Home Guard will have the correct information. 2. Look after your gas mask. Wear it for half an hour each week. Buy a 2-ounce pot of No. 2 anti-gas ointment. 3. All householders are advised to have 3 days of rations and a supply of candles in the house. Further supplies will be available in due course. 4. If the water supply is cut off, you will be told where to get supplies for drinking and cooking. Lavatories must not be used, and a trench should be made in the garden and a supply of chloride of lime prepared now. Casualties may be brought to your house when you will be expected to render every assistance. 6. If you see parachutists dropping, you must inform the police or wardens or Home Guard or the military at once, giving the number you have seen. It is essential that this information is accurate. This is important. If church bells are rung, it means that the enemy are dropping from planes. Unless already detailed for special duty, you must stay indoors until you receive instructions from the police or wardens or Home Guard. Finally, the public were told to take no orders from any policeman, warden or Home Guard who is a stranger to you. He might easily be a 5th columnist or even actual enemy in British uniform. If you are in doubt, ask to see their identity card. There were a number of practical issues. Firstly, although there was a telephone in the school at the first aid post, the Public Assistance Board would not allow the use of it by the Civil Defence. 2. 2 Home Guardsmen and 4 wardens would be needed to immobilise petrol pumps. Car owners would be instructed to immobilise their cars. 3. There were no first aid facilities apart from the first aid post. 4. While water was available at the wells in Pressonkirk Home Garden and the Peary well, the Water Board would give an emergency supply, if possible, by mobile water tanks. 5. No alternative lighting supply existed other than lamps and candles. 6. Burial parties would need to be arranged. 7. The telephone exchange would be picketed by the Home Guard. 8. Available local labour would be commandeered by the authority of the Invasion Committee. 9. Supplementary fire parties would be needed, consisting of 16 parties of 3 men, 12 stirrup pumps, 16 fire buckets, and 150 sandbags were available. 10. At the last resort, sewage would be carried to the river. Part 4. One of the committee's tasks was to hold an invasion exercise. Exercise Lynn took place on the 24th May 1942. 6 umpires were appointed. Fire and Water, D.W. Murdoch. Police, Inspector Johnson. Medical, Doctors McLean, Hislop and Campbell. WVS, Mrs. Hay of Belton. The event was reviewed on the 14th of June. It noted no members of the Home Guard were available to guard water tanks or other vulnerable points, and that wardens were to be brushed up on first aid. After reviewing how successful this had been, it was agreed that a fuller exercise called Exercise Tyne should be held. It took place on the 11th of October 1942 and anticipated that paratroopers would land at Sunnyside and Preston Mains. Their objective was a radio station in the Masonic Hall, a petrol dump at the Park Pavilion, and a food store at the slaughterhouse. It assumed that the top floor of the manor house had been hit by bombs and that 4 people were trapped, that houses at Hardy Terrace, Walker Terrace, High Street and Lauder Place were hit by incendiary bombs, that a petrol dump at the Park Pavilion had been attacked along with an unexploded bomb at the railway station, and that the bridge at the Lynn had been blown up. About 5 o'clock in the afternoon, a ceasefire was declared and tea was provided at the rest centre. At a review on the 16th of October 1942, it was reported that the fire brigade were not protected by the Home Guard, casualties in street fighting were not attended to, and no instructions about explosive incendiary bombs had been given to the supplementary fire parties. The last committee meeting took place on the 2nd of July 1943. The threat of invasion was believed to be over. It had met on 30 occasions. Part 5. Reflection. Looking back at the work of this committee, it is hard for us to appreciate that in other parts of the United Kingdom, ordinary members of the public were following the same advice and having to deal with the effects of the war on their doorsteps in the Battle of Britain. The only first-hand account I managed to get was from a David Ritchie. He was a scientist specialising in the production of gun sights, and he had family living on the New Bath estate. He was not allowed past an armed roadblock at the entrance to Preston Road at 9 o'clock at night around 1942. A fuller moving account of the impact of the lives of 6 real people affected by the Blitz in London by Lucy Worsley, called Blitz Spirit, is available on BBC iPlayer. But I believe the story of the East Linton Invasion Committee and the involvement of local inhabitants deserves to be better known in this anniversary year. I have compiled this record as a member of the former East Linton Local History Society. Thank you for taking an interest in this topic.